There's a way, and I think all of you tonight are the will, and what we're looking for tonight is the way. And the way, I think, in our group kind of comes to this consensus that the way begins with good management. We talked a lot, we had a great group, a lot of input, some business people, a lot of residents. The first person said, hey, why not a public-private partnership? Private interests working with the public to come up with the best management team. The plan for development produced by a civil authority. At the ULI presentation, which I went to, one of the things the ULI panel came up with was some kind of a public authority, maybe a civic advisory panel that would be put in place by the city council, much like we have a planning commission and a recreation parks commission. A civic advisory panel to begin the process of creating what will be, the Civic Auditorium plus the rest of the site. There was a great consensus in our group that the city needs help planning what to do with the Civic. That perhaps a better solution would be the Civic Advisory Panel made up of people who actually know how to run entertainment venues. And to keep this process open. People that really know the business of making venues, entertainment venues, profitable. You know, you don't take, if you need a doctor, you don't go to the mechanic. If your car breaks down, you don't go to the doctor. So let's get the best people, the Civic Advisory Panel, together, selected to drive this car. There's a lot of examples that we came up with in Santa Monica of that happening. Years ago, when there were some people that wanted to tear down the Santa Monica Pier, an advisory panel came aboard and helped save it. And then that group morphed into what we have today, which is overseeing the pier. And I mean, yesterday they just came out with the list of the summer concert series. What is it, 28 years of summer Twilight concert series on the pier. It's a viable entity. It's being replaced. We're going to have a new bridge over the pier. They did the job. That's a great model to look at if you're looking at some places, a panel to save the Civic. We also talked about the Convention and Visitors Bureau, another model, a group of experts who know the business that they are involved in to do the same thing for the Civic Auditorium. What's being managed? That has to be determined first. You know, before we talk about funding, before we talk about the cultural activities that are going to be there, we need the good management in place. And it was the consensus of our group that this panel should be formed sooner rather than later to help drive this process. And that management would evolve over time, taking in the best ideas, putting it to the public, putting it before various commissions, the Planning Commission, before the City Council, a very open, transparent process that accepts ideas from all over, from all entities, private and public. Committee for Transitional Time, public-private partnership of experts. We talked a little about who do you want on this panel? Who should manage the Civic? People with experience managing entertainment venues. The whole idea, you know, when the expo line comes in, let's give some people a reason to take a left and head south. The Civic Auditorium and other venues, other cultural activities, a real vibrant hub of the city that maybe could, we can incorporate part of Santa Monica High School, Barnum Hall, the Greek Theater, maybe a food court. You know, I've heard the theater idea mentioned. A whole campus, a cultural campus. That would be a real draw, combined with, Tongva Park, the pier. Give people a reason to take a left off the expo and not just head to the promenade or to the pier. What else did we talk about? Yeah, council, we thought that the city council ultimately will make these decisions. That they should, just like we have a planning commission opening or you form a recreation and parks commission, we should have a civic advisory panel selected by members of the city council ultimately to drive this process. Involve people who used to run the Civic. There are people in town, and there are a lot of people in Southern California who have worked for, Nederlander or MSG, some of these big, somebody just bought the Forum and is going to turn that into an entertainment venue, and they know what they're doing. There's a great resource of people willing to give their expertise to make sure that we have the best possible Civic Auditorium site available. And by the way, the Urban Land Use Institute, all those people are volunteers, I believe. And they're a panel of experts that are devoting their time to come up with good urban land use decisions. We need that same kind of panel to drive this decision. Nonprofit fundraisers, we talked a lot of things, but essentially good management is going to make or break whatever happens with the Civic Auditorium. And maybe the best people to manage the Civic Auditorium would be people from the business side with public input, people who have done it before successfully. Thank you very much.
Well, I just wanted to say I wore this Santa Monica Symphony t-shirt today because maybe in some cosmic way down the road, the Santa Monica Symphony will be back in the Civic Auditorium again because Barnum Hall is not big enough. A lot of people have been turned away. It's great, but a 3,000 seat venue is perfect. I just want to say for those of you that don't know, Welton Beckett, the award-winning architect, his son, who's also an architect, is here today to help. His name is Bruce Beckett, and I had the honor of meeting him, and a lot of people did, from the Landmarks Commission, when he came 12 years ago to make sure this was landmarked, and it was done unanimously. We must work respectfully with the Landmarks Commission, as well as the City Council and the Planning Commission, and I guess the ARB, of course, and the Santa Monica Conservancy that's been doing good stuff already, and the city staff. Everybody wants to make this work. But I think John's comments about the experts is a very important thing. The people like John Alshalor and the others that have worked on things and entertainment things should be put together, and everyone wants to make this work. As long as we're respecting the heritage, the landmark heritage of this, the funds will come. If we're divided and we don't do it respectfully, the big funders won't be there. And I can just imagine all the people that were there at the Academy Awards for its last thing there before it went off would come back and help. All the superstar musical people that have performed there over the years would come back and help. So many people would help financially, and we would too, with smaller donations and larger donations. It's just a gem that needs to be polished. Thank you very much.
So now we are going to turn it over to those of you who wanted to share comments with the rest of the group, and I'm just going to call you one by one and hand you the microphone. So Jerry Rubin.
Well, I just wanted to say I wore this Santa Monica Symphony t-shirt today because maybe in some cosmic way down the road, the Santa Monica Symphony will be back in the Civic Auditorium again because Barnum Hall is not big enough. A lot of people have been turned away. It's great, but a 3,000 seat venue is perfect. I just want to say for those of you that don't know, Welton Beckett, the award-winning architect, his son, who's also an architect, is here today to help. His name is Bruce Beckett, and I had the honor of meeting him, and a lot of people did, from the Landmarks Commission, when he came 12 years ago to make sure this was landmarked, and it was done unanimously. We must work respectfully with the Landmarks Commission, as well as the City Council and the Planning Commission, and I guess the ARB, of course, and the Santa Monica Conservancy that's been doing good stuff already, and the city staff. Everybody wants to make this work. But I think John's comments about the experts is a very important thing. The people like John Alshalor and the others that have worked on things and entertainment things should be put together, and everyone wants to make this work. As long as we're respecting the heritage, the landmark heritage of this, the funds will come. If we're divided and we don't do it respectfully, the big funders won't be there. And I could just imagine all the people that were there at the Academy Awards for its last thing there before it went off would come back and help. All the superstar musical people that have performed there over the years would come back and help. So many people would help financially, and we would too, with smaller donations and larger donations. It's just a gem that needs to be polished. Thank you very much.
Our former mayor, Michael Feinstein.
So while I am very much for saving the Civic Auditorium and keeping an open mind about how 4th and Pico might be renovated, I just want to respond briefly to something that I felt was historically inaccurate in the pivot that the ULI slideshow made in terms of talking about the change of use at 4th and Pico. And what the slideshow, thank you Nina Fresco for wherever you are for directing me to that, and I looked at that to prepare for today. And what the slideshow says is, well, the school district doesn't want 4th and Pico for a field anymore, therefore the need for that being open space can be changed to developing it here, and that was as deep as the discussion went. And as somebody who watched the community members in the Civic Center specific plan discussion starting in the late 80s, watched it go through the 90s when the open space element came in, and my specific role in going, may he rest in peace, to Frank Schwengel when we had talked about 4th and Pico being open space, and then when nobody was stepping up from the open space community to come forward, and people then started talking about putting housing there, I went to Frank and said, Frank, you better get your people down here. And at that point, it was locked in, and I don't remember all the dates and all this, but at that point it was pretty much locked in that 4th and Pico was to be open space, and the type of field use initially was more like we have in Ocean View Park down at the beach. Thank you, I'm so glad Karen, you're nodding. Because I was like questioning, do I remember this clearly? Both the Village Green and the Ocean View parks down at the beach, where people would spontaneously use it as a field, but it wouldn't be necessarily programmed officially as a soccer field. Over time then, after it was already to be open space, people then started saying maybe we got to program it specifically as a soccer field, and then more specifically the school district has its need and should it take it. So this is not a question of if the school district doesn't want it as a soccer field, the need for it for that number of acres to be open space just goes out the window without any further discussion. We have a dozens of acre deficit in the open space element in the city. We had already counted on these acres there. I'm almost done, Maria. Almost counted on those acres being part of our trying to reach our goals. And if we are to change that now, as I was suggesting before, I believe that any capital improvement measure there needs to replace on an acre by acre basis the space we would lose there. Whether it means covering the freeway to have it nearby or somewhere else. The other premises which we had previously and would go out the window if we developed this is this open space was put there in part for the community to accept the density in the housing in the Civic Center, and the people that were going to live in those units were to look across the street and Main Street and have this be open space. And many of us in the community have accepted that we're going to move from Sleepy Beach Town to accept density with open space. We didn't agree to accept density without open space. The final piece is the parking structure behind the Civic Auditorium, or behind the County Court building, excuse me. That was premised on taking that and fighting the hotel behind them who lost the views and their value of the views in their hotel rooms. That was all premised on having 4th and Pico being open space, and we'd be willing to accept that big structure because we're getting something open there. So I just wanted to historically remind people of all these premises that we based early planning on, and if we now choose to develop 4th and Pico, when the open space there was supposed to balance out many other more intensive uses, and we simply throw away that idea of balance, we're going against many years of wisdom and commitments we made to the community. And therefore, I believe this process, it makes it more expensive, it's more difficult to do. I think we have to commit to replacing the open space at 4th and Pico, anything that we take away with it somewhere else and rather close in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.